It was getting dark and stuffy outside. A storm was brewing, and there was no breeze. Ray was driving home after difficult and heavy business negotiations. Passing by the park, he stopped abruptly and parked, wanting to take a walk on the path to the large pond. He often came here to distract himself from work and relax. Ray leisurely walked to the clean and beautiful pond, sat on a bench and admired how the ducks dived amusingly and quacked cheerfully. Nearby, a grandmother and her 7-year-old grandson were walking. The boy was funny and red-haired, like the sun. The elderly woman limped heavily on one leg, and the grandson supported her by the hand, helping her not to fall. From the side, the little boy's care looked very touching. The woman wearily sat down on a nearby bench, and the restless boy opened his shabby backpack, took out a sheet of paper, and ran up to Ray. "Hello. Please, make me a paper boat. I want to float it on the water, but Grandma cannot do it." Ray laughed. "Let me teach you. It's not difficult. Look, we take a sheet of paper from both sides, fold it in half," and suddenly the man glimpsed what was written on the old yellowed sheet. "My dear, breakfast is on the table. Your favourite cheese pancakes. If you leave, close the door. You're Ray." Ray's breath caught, and he broke into a cold sweat. This couldn't be. It was his own note left for one person many years ago. He wouldn't mistake his own handwriting for anyone else's. It was just unbelievable. Ray grew up in an orphanage and went through harsh trials before becoming successful and rich, achieving everything on his own, from scratch. His mother gave up on him in the maternity ward and just ran away. So the child never knew maternal affection or home warmth. All his childhood, he was surrounded by governmental walls and adults indifferent towards the fate of orphanage children. There were humiliations and punishments, malnutrition, and deadening loneliness. Ray realized early on that he couldn't rely on anyone but himself, and learned to fight and stand up for himself. Besides, the boy had a talent and a passion for technology, including electronics. He learned to understand and repair breakdowns, and soon even the educators started asking him for help and advice, respecting him for his intelligence and resourcefulness. Besides, Ray had a commercial vein. He knew and understood where and what could be bought cheaper and sold at a profit and a higher price, making a good profit for himself. After graduation, one of his teachers, feeling sorry for the talented and stubborn boy, helped him with entering to the college. Thanks to him, Ray did not go, like many others, the wrong way, but became a qualified economist and started his own business. At first, he organized a small company for the repair and sale of office equipment and phones. Little by little, orders started coming in, income multiplied, and the business gained momentum. Ray lived in a tiny and worn-out room allotted to him by the state, ate only macaroni and the cheapest sausage, and invested all the profits in his creation. It was very difficult. The guy spun like a squirrel in a wheel for days, skipped meals, and slept poorly. But over time, he bought himself a cozy house, furnished it with love, and began to enjoy comfort. In his career, everything was going more than great, but in his personal life, Ray was categorically unlucky. The man fell in love at first sight with the gorgeous blonde Carol, whom he met at his friend's birthday. The girl had completely won over the young man with her beauty. She seemed so sweet and charming. A passionate romance ensued and the couple soon married. However, after the wedding, Carol drastically changed. Where did the shy and quiet girl go? The wife began to squander money left and right, only thinking about new outfits and social events. As it turned out, Carol was completely unsuited to household and family life, and had no intention of learning or finding a job. She also didn't want to hear about children, saying it was too early to rush. And then the bedtime pleasures became boring and did not please either of them, and there was nothing else that the couple had in common. The man was often furious when, coming home after a hard work day, he saw his wife chatting non-stop with some friend and the expensive pizza from the restaurant for dinner. Years went on and nothing changed. In response to her husband's requests to cook or bake something occasionally, Carol only snorted. "Why should I slave away at the stove? Hire a cook. What's the problem?" After 5 years, Ray finally filed for divorce, tired of his wife's insatiable appetite. Nothing was enough for her. After the divorce, the businessman certainly had other romances, but they all ended in breakups. Ray was good at making money, lived in luxury, but did not consider money the meaning of his life. He helped orphans because he himself had suffered greatly in childhood and knew how difficult it was to survive in shelters. His only true friend was a huge dog named Simon. The man got him for a few dollars from a homeless person. The puppy was in terrible condition, skinny, flea-ridden, and with a torn ear. Ray spent a long time taking care of the dog, treating him, giving him vaccinations, buying special food, and finally cured him and sincerely loved him. So they lived together with the dog, but Ray longed for a family, children, and domestic warmth. His musings and memories were interrupted by the same boy who had not left and patiently waited for the stranger to finally make a paper boat. "Did you forget how to make a paper boat?" asked the boy. Ray shook his head, chasing away the shadows of the past, and suddenly asked, "What's your name, little one? Where did you get this piece of paper? Tell me, it's critical for me to know." The boy looked at him in surprise. "My name is Kevin. I took the piece of paper from the pile of old notebooks at home. It was useless, anyway." Ray put aside the yellowed piece of paper, went to his briefcase, took out a clean album sheet, and made the paper boat. He gave it to the joyful boy, and then approached his grandmother with the same note. "Good afternoon. My name is Ray. Excuse me, but your grandson just asked me to make a paper boat from this piece of paper, and I accidentally read the note. Here it is, take a look. It may seem silly and ridiculous from the outside, but it's my note. I wrote it many years ago to a girl named Tracy. Are you familiar with her? Otherwise, how could this not be in your house?" The elderly woman sighed heavily. "Nice to meet you. My name is Dorothy, and yes, Tracy was my late daughter. She died 7 years ago during childbirth. Now I'm raising my grandson alone. It's so hard, I have no strength or health left. And the note? I don't even know. Perhaps my daughter loved you very much, since she kept it so carefully." Ray asked, dumbfounded, "How did she die? And when is Kevin's birthday?" Dorothy confirmed. "Kevin was born on June the 9th, but I don't even know who the father is. My daughter was silent until the very end. She lived in another city for a while and worked at a cafe. She often called, chattering about how she had met her true love and how everything was going so well, and they were already living together, with the wedding coming soon. Then suddenly she came home with her things in tears and was pregnant. She was silently crying into her pillow. I tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't listen. It seems she had a fight with her boyfriend. But I'm not that heartless, and I felt sorry for my daughter. I grumbled a bit and forgave her. I didn't want to burden her with questions. I thought she would give birth, recover, and tell me everything. But then everything turned out so terrible. Oh, what a tragedy. The pregnancy was difficult, the delivery was complicated, and they barely saved Kevin. But they couldn't save his mother. When I was told that my daughter had died, I couldn't believe it. How could this happen? I took a healthy woman to the maternity ward, and they killed her. She was so young. She had so much life ahead of her. At first I thought I would go crazy with grief. I was angry, and I didn't want to take care of the baby. I thought everything was his fault. But then my heart softened, and I went to see him. When I took my grandson in my arms, it was like a light shone in my soul, and warmth spread throughout. He was such a wonderful baby, with red hair and blinking eyes, and I realized that he was an innocent soul, not guilty of anything. And he was an orphan. His father was missing and his mother had passed away. What awaits him? An orphanage? And what about me? Could I live, eat and sleep peacefully, knowing that my grandson was suffering in an orphanage? In the end, I took my grandson with me, and we lived together. It's hard for me, of course. I save on everything, and I can't work because of my cursed limp. Oh, I'm sorry for rambling on. Apparently I've been holding it all in for so many years. Ray was in complete shock. Everything matched up. Could Kevin be his son? He had red hair. Ray was blonde, but Tracy had beautiful honey copper hair and freckles on her nose. Maybe he took after his mother. How can he verify all this? And then it dawned on him. He discreetly took a fallen hair from the boy's shoulder and put it in his pocket. And at the same time he was continuing the conversation. How long have you been limping, Dorothy? What kind of illness do you have? It's not just impertinence or curiosity. I want to help you. The woman replied, Oh, it's been a long time, dear. It's been 9 years since I slipped on the ice and fell on my knee awkwardly. Since then I've had problems with my leg, and every year it gets worse. I damaged the joint. The doctors prescribed useless ointments and injections and hinted expensive surgery to replace the entire joint. But that costs a lot of money. Where can I get it from? It was getting dark, and the woman realized, Oh, it's time for us to go home. Otherwise it'll be nightfall by the time I get there, and my grandson hasn't had dinner yet. Let me give you a ride home, it's not a problem. My car is parked here, near the park. The old lady started wailing. Thank you, kind man. I won't refuse. When I think about how far I have to walk, I get scared. Ray drove his grandma and Kevin home and saw where they lived. Their house was small, shabby, and it was clear that they lived in poverty. The new acquaintances said goodbye warmly, like old friends, and Ray drove home. All evening he couldn't get little red-haired Kevin out of his head, and he went back in his memory to that same romance with Tracy. This happened almost immediately after his divorce from his wife. He felt bad and miserable, and he decided to drink so heavily that everything bad would fly out of his head. He could have done it in an expensive restaurant, but for some reason he wanted to do it in an ordinary roadside cafe. That's where he met Tracy. This was a lively, red-haired young woman with an enchanting smile. Brought him one shot after another, but he wasn't getting drunk. He desperately wanted to talk to someone to share his problems, but he had no real, loyal friends. The place was closing, the visitors had all left, and the waitress suddenly sat next to him and said shyly, "We're closing soon. Are you still sad? Did something happen to you? May I help with something?" Ray was so touched by her concern and sympathy for a stranger that he suddenly replied, "You can. Get yourself some wine and repeat it for me, and just listen to me. I need it right now. I can't drink alcohol, I'm at work, and I can't chat with customers either, but as an exception, I'll have coffee with you gladly. There's no one else here anyway." Tracy sat down next to him, and he unknowingly poured out his heart to her, something that had never happened to him before. The girl listened seriously, didn't interrupt, and didn't give any advice. Then suddenly she said, "I know how to help you. You need a friend, one who will always be there, won't betray you, and will warm you up. Come with me." And she confidently led the bewildered man somewhere to the storage room. Ray didn't understand anything, and Tracy led him through a back door to a small courtyard, bent down and started rustling her hand under the porch. Then, panting, she pulled out a big cardboard box. In it, on a soft cushion, funny, colourful kittens were squirming. She took the strongest, big-eyed, ash-grey kitten and sat him on the man's lap. "This is Zorro. Don't be afraid. Pet him, and he'll immediately lift your mood. These poor things were left completely alone. That's why I'm taking care of them. At first I ran to feed them with a dropper every hour, and everyone laughed at me. They didn't believe that the kittens would survive. But I managed to get them all on their feet. And this is my favourite kitten. He's so wonderful. Don't you want to take him? I would take him myself, but I have a cat at home, and my landlady won't allow another kitten." The little ball of fur trustingly snuggled up to the man, and as soon as he felt the warm hands, he immediately started to purr and rub his face, making loud sounds. Ray couldn't help but smile. The kitten was so cute and funny. He looked at the waitress tenderly and replied, "I am relieved. I am just like this abandoned kitten. I grew up in a shelter, so I understand what it's like for him without a mum. I already have a dog. Now I'll have a cat too. It will be more fun in the house. But I have one condition. You should promise to visit the pet occasionally." That's how they started dating. Tracy was sweet, straightforward and open. She fell deeply in love with Ray, which was evident in her eyes. She looked at him so devotedly. At first, Ray was also passionate, and the couple even started living together. It was Tracy who taught him to leave cute notes for each other and do little things for each other. However, after a few months, Ray's passion cooled down, and living together became boring. He began to nitpick at the girl. She cooked dinner wrong, didn't know how to dress stylishly, or behave in high society. Tracy often cried, "Well, you knew I was a simple waitress. Why are we living together then? Let's break up since I'm not your match and not worthy to be with you." Then they usually made up passionately, and everything seemed to go on as usual. But the crack in their relationship grew bigger. One evening they quarrelled again out of the blue. Tracy couldn't take it anymore. She slammed the door and left. Ray didn't stop her, and they foolishly broke up. The man plunged headlong into work, and a lot of time passed. Only the chubby cat reminded him of that fleeting romance. And only now, seeing Kevin, Ray suddenly realized that Tracy was perhaps the only one who loved him for who he was, not for his money. His heart ached so much that he couldn't appreciate her sincere feelings, couldn't build a family, couldn't keep such a good, simple girl. Ray sent Kevin's hair for testing. He wasn't worried. He was somehow sure that the baby was his son. The little boy had won Ray's heart, and he felt so sorry for him, and for his old, lame grandmother too. That's why the next evening after work, he decided to visit them. On the way, he brought Kevin a big racing car with a remote control and lots of sweets, a bag of food and a cake. He timidly knocked on the rickety gate. Almost immediately, he heard the boy's ringing voice. "Who's there?" "Oh, hello, Ray. Are you visiting us? Come in." "Wow, is that for me? Cool. I've never had such a car. Tom will be jealous. He always teases me." The boy chattered non-stop. His grandmother came out and she only fluttered her arms when she saw the delicacies on the table. "Oh, Ray, good morning. But why so much of everything? It's uncomfortable. Come in, please. And I've just cooked pancakes with apples. Don't be shy. Try them. I'll turn on the kettle right away. What brings you here?" Ray looked around. Everything here required immediate and major repairs. But it was clean and tidy, although you could immediately tell that children were living here. "You know, I didn't tell you everything yesterday. I had a romance with your daughter, and then we broke up foolishly, and I'm mostly to blame. Yesterday evening I was thinking, what if Kevin is my son? Maybe it's possible. I feel like he's not a stranger to me, you know? I don't know how to explain it. That's why I decided to visit you. I live alone with my dog and cat. I want a family, children. I couldn't create a family in my youth, and now it's not working out either." Dorothy sighed heavily. "I don't know what to tell you. Maybe he is your son, maybe he isn't. As I said, my daughter didn't tell me anything properly. She didn't have time. I understand it's hard to be alone. You can visit us more often. We're always happy to see you. Kevin is so happy when he sees you. But don't bring any gifts. Just come. He needs parental love. I can see that. I can't keep up with him anymore. He's too active." Ray stayed with Dorothy until late at night. They and Kevin worked on puzzles, played with airplanes, had dinner together and drank tea with cake. Ray felt so good with the little boy. His soul was filled with warmth, tenderness, and some unknown feelings of love for the small, defenseless human being. But when the test results came, Ray was shocked. Kevin was not his son. The man sat on a poof and just froze, sitting there for almost an hour. He was sure that Kevin was his biological son. He felt some sort of invisible connection with him. After thinking it over, Ray didn't say anything to Dorothy and continued to visit them. The little boy missed him and ran up to him, hugging him tightly. One night, Dorothy called him in a panic. "I apologize for calling you in the middle of the night, but something's wrong with Kevin. He's vomiting, he has a high fever, and he's holding his stomach. I don't know what to do." Ray jumped out of bed. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Dress him up. We're going to the hospital." He drove like crazy, ran into the house, picked up the boy, and whispered to him, "Hang in there. We're going to the hospital now. Everything will be fine. Where does it hurt? Show me." The frightened and tearful boy was writhing in pain. Oh, my stomach hurts. Am I going to die like my mom?" Ray was speechless. "Don't scare Grandma, or we'll have to treat her too. Be brave, you're a man. I've told you, everything will be fine. Do you trust me?" Kevin nodded, gasping for air. "I trust you. Just stay with me. Don't leave me, okay?" The boy had appendicitis and he was rushed into surgery. Dorothy and Ray waited in the hallway. An hour later, the doctor came out and said, "Don't worry, everything's in order. He'll be jumping and running in 3 weeks. Now, go home and come and visit tomorrow. One of you can stay if you like, as an exception." Ray looked at Dorothy pleadingly. "I'll call you a taxi. Go home and I'll stay with Kevin." The woman wiped her tears with a handkerchief. "Thank you for everything. I was so scared for my grandson. Whom to call, where to run. When I thought something bad had happened to my grandson, I felt sick. He's the only one I have left on this earth." Ray was dozing on a chair in the ward, waiting for the boy to wake up after the anesthesia. Finally, Kevin opened his eyes and, seeing Ray, immediately smiled painfully and said softly, "Are you here with me? Thank you, Ray. You know, you're like a dad to me. Thank you so much." Ray couldn't contain himself. Tears rolled down his eyes, and he sat closer to the child and tousled his red curls. "I promised you, and men always keep their promises. You have also become like a son to me. I was so worried about you, more than about myself, and you scared us both, me and the granny. Ray visited Kevin every day, brought him toys, and knew for sure that he would never be able to part with him. Life without this lively prankster and restless boy had no meaning at all. And then Ray decided to have an honest conversation with Dorothy. The man was very nervous, not knowing how she would react. Would she agree to his idea? Ray brought the grandmother home from the hospital, and they sat down in the kitchen to have tea. And then Ray began. "Dorothy, I have to have a critical conversation with you. We haven't known each other for long, I agree, but it so happened that I loved Kevin with all my heart, literally attached to him, and he to me, as you can see. I would like to adopt him. I'm sorry to say this, but you're far from young, and anything can happen. I want to live together with Kevin, raise him, teach him, love him. I can give him a good education, make him a decent person. Don't worry, I'm not going to separate you. I have a big, comfortable house, plenty of room for everyone. What do you think about it?" The woman thought carefully, weighed everything, was silent for a long time, and then replied, "We don't really know each other very well, and I'm terrified to make such an important decision, but for some reason I believe you. You don't have any selfish motives, and you saved my grandson. I agree, but know that I won't let him out of my sight. If you're not lying and will live together, then so be it. I don't want my grandson to end up in an orphanage. Did you have to ask him yourself? It's important that he wants this too. I won't force the child." The next day, Ray visited Kevin. He was holding his side and moaning. Then Ray came up with a trick. "Hey, do you want me to tell you something that will make you forget all about your pain, and you'll start jumping like a grasshopper?" The boy looked interested and stopped moaning. "What? Tell me." Ray exhaled. "I want to adopt you and take you and your grandmother to live with me. I have a big house, a huge, friendly dog, and a cat. I promise to love you and never hurt you. So, how do you like the news? Are you happy?" Kevin beamed and almost jumped in place. "Hooray! You'll be my dad now? For real? Awesome! When I saw you in the park, I somehow thought you were good, and you turned out to be the best." Ray hugged the joyful child. The next day, the man submitted all the necessary adoption documents, and Kevin and his grandmother moved in with him. Strangely enough, there was not the slightest discomfort. Dorothy took over the kitchen and enjoyed every day walking along the alley in the courtyard, even though it was difficult for her. Kevin quickly became friends with the dog and enthusiastically began teaching him commands. In the evenings, he played with Zorro and petted his belly. One day, Dorothy showed Ray Tracy's grave. He was looking at a photo of this young and pretty red-headed woman for a long time and thought how unfair it was that she left life so early and he could not return anything. Then the man whispered, "Well, hello, Tracy. Please forgive me, a fool for not keeping our relationship. I thought foolishly that you were not my match. How could a businessman and a simple waitress be together? And only now have I realized that you loved me sincerely and selflessly, without asking for anything in return. Don't worry about your son. He's in good hands. I promise that I will raise him as a true man and do everything to make him happy." Suddenly, the sun peeked out from behind the clouds and warmed him with its rays. Ray was sure that it was Tracy's response. He tidied up the grave, ordered an expensive gravestone, and began to visit it frequently with Kevin. During one of these visits, Ray saw a young woman in a black lace scarf. She held flowers and cried quietly next to Tracy's grave. Surprised, Ray approached the stranger and asked, "Good evening. Excuse me, did you know Tracy? Are you her friend?" The woman answered quietly, "Of course I knew her. No, I'm not her friend. We had a complicated relationship. The news of her death was a shock to me. It's a long and old story." Ray and the woman moved to a bench, and she began her sad story. "My name is Gwen. You see, I got married at 18. My husband was good, kind, and I had no reason to complain, but I was infertile. Doctors had long given up on me and said that I would never get pregnant. 7 years ago we put an ad looking for a surrogate mother. Tracy responded. We liked her with my husband. She was a simple, sweet girl. The only thing that worried us was that she didn't have any children of her own at the time. Usually such women are not chosen to be surrogate mothers. But Tracy insisted, begged us, and assured us that she was healthy. She urgently needed a lot of money for her mother's surgery, who had some problems with her legs. Tracy became pregnant successfully. We rented an apartment for her, bought groceries, monitored her health, and my husband and I couldn't believe that we would become parents very soon. But every day, Tracy became more and more gloomy, often cried, and didn't tell us something. We began to suspect that something was wrong, and a couple of months later, the future mother simply ran away, leaving a note that she couldn't give up her baby. And she didn't care who the father was. She refused any money. We were in shock. I cried for a long time, couldn't come to my senses, was angry with her. How could she act so irresponsibly? We asked her 100 times if she was willing to give up the baby. Did she understand that he was someone else's? She agreed to everything and then did that. But misfortunes never come alone. The same year, my husband died. He fell under the ice on a winter fishing trip. I thought I'd go insane with grief, cried day and night. So I'm all alone in the world now, childless and unwanted. I forgave Tracy a long time ago, because it's probably impossible to give away a baby you carried yourself. It's very difficult morally. But I kept thinking, where is my baby? How is he doing there? So I decided to find Tracy, talk to her, maybe see my child. I made a lot of effort to find her address, and they said that she had died during childbirth. Now I'm standing here crying, wondering where to find my own son. Ray almost burst into tears when he heard the story of the sad woman, and pointing at the boy he whispered, "There he is, Kevin, your son. He really looks like you, like 2 drops of water. I was wondering who he takes after. Tracy also had copper hair, but not as bright as yours. I recently adopted him. He calls me Daddy. We love each other. I won't just give him away to you." The woman covered her face with her hands and began to cry bitterly. "How can this be? I am his biological mother. He is my flesh and blood. How unfair life is. The boy considers Tracy is his mother, and you're his father. And me? What about me? Will I have to live alone and not see or communicate with my own son? Then there's no point in living." Ray felt so sorry for this poor stranger with a broken fate. It's really cruel to know that you have a son and not have the opportunity to see, love and raise him. This shouldn't be. And the man said emotionally, "Gwen, listen, there's no need to despair. After all, aren't we both human? Can't we agree on how to raise the child? Or are we going to tear him apart? I have an offer for you. Move in with me, permanently. I have a big house. I'll give you a bedroom on the 2nd floor with a balcony. I live there with Kevin and his grandmother. We'll raise our son together." I understand it sounds crazy, to move in with a man you've only known for half an hour, but I assure you, I have nothing bad in mind. I am a respected businessman. Many people know and respect me. I just see how you're suffering, tormented, and want to help. After all, if you don't like anything, we can always go our separate ways, right? But I have one condition. Don't tell him directly that you are his mother. It will break him mentally. Gradually, Kevin will get used to you, be drawn to you, and I'm sure he'll start calling you Mum. Gwen nodded. Yes, of course you're right. Such news will be a shock for the boy. He thinks his mother died, and he won't accept me with open arms just like that. That's understandable too. Thanks for the offer. Can I think about it a little? Let's exchange phone numbers. I need some time to settle work and move as well. For the whole week, Ray was not himself after that conversation with Gwen at the cemetery. This sad, lonely stranger, who turned out to be Kevin's mother, deeply touched him. He thought about her day and night, wondering if she would agree to move in with him or not. In his heart, he really wanted her to agree. For some reason, he was drawn to her. He wanted to see those huge, sad eyes and catch a barely perceptible floral scent of her perfume again. Gwen, on the other hand, roamed around the apartment, packing her bags, and kept thinking, "Oh God, what am I doing? Where am I going? To whom? To a strange man in another city? I'm leaving my familiar job, and who knows how it will be there? I'm crossing out my entire life in one swift jump, like jumping into a chasm. But on the other hand, what kind of life? Full of loneliness and sadness, tears and pain. What am I losing? A boring route, work empty, housework. After all, my son Kevin is there. So what if they're strangers for now, and he doesn't know her? At least she'll be there like a guardian angel to protect and love him. And time will fix everything. No, it's decided. My son is worth it." Throughout the journey, Gwen shivered as if cold. She had bought her son an expensive robot and a trendy backpack, and timidly knocked on the door. A huge dog barked, and she heard a male voice. "Simon, stop! Who's there?" Ray came out onto the porch, and his heart started beating faster when he saw Gwen standing there. How beautiful she looked in her cashmere coat, with a red strand of hair sticking out from under her cute beret. Her huge eyes looked so scared. "Well, here I am," she said. "Accept the new tenant. I hope you haven't changed your mind and everything is still valid." Ray smiled broadly and replied, "Gwen, come in. I'm overjoyed you accepted my offer. I warned Dorothy, but I haven't given her all the details yet. I think it won't be easy for her to find out that her daughter died giving birth to someone else's child. I told her you're my good old friend." The man took the heavy suitcase by the handle and rolled it into the house, showing her the rooms along the way and telling her where everything was. Curious, Kevin immediately ran up to the guest and bombarded her with questions. "Hi, I remember you. We met at the cemetery near my mum's grave. Are you visiting us? Why do you have a suitcase? Are you going to live with us?" Gwen was embarrassed, but Ray saved the situation and said, "This is Gwen, your mum's friend, and my good acquaintance. She will live with us and work as your nanny. I'm busy with work all day long, and your grandma is tired because of your activity and antics. Gwen will take care of you, play with you, so you won't be bored. I'm sure you'll be friends." "That's great!" the boy exclaimed joyfully. "She'll help me with my homework. I'm not good at math." Gwen breathed a sigh of relief. Now everyone understood the reason of her presence here, and it didn't cause any confusion, and Kevin would get used to her faster. Dorothy didn't need any additional explanations. Ray was just getting ready to take the elderly woman to his acquaintance, a professor, to consult about knee surgery. He really wanted to help Kevin's grandmother so she wouldn't limp so badly and suffer from joint pain. And if there was going to be surgery, then Kevin would definitely need a nanny while his grandmother was in the hospital. So they all started living together, gradually getting used to each other and becoming truly close people. Gwen and Kevin immediately found a common language. The boy was drawn to her, as if feeling that invisible thread between them that connected them with ties of blood. They happily did things together, went for walks, watched cartoons, and played with the cat Zorro. As for Gwen and Ray, they had been friends for a long time. They loved to drink a glass of wine with appetizing snacks on weekends and have long, heartfelt conversations until late at night about life. The man openly told her about his difficult childhood and his unsuccessful past romances, and Gwen didn't hide anything, lamenting that she would never be able to give birth and that she still remembered her husband and missed him. Both felt mutual sympathy and an attraction to each other, but didn't dare to cross the line. The common concerns about their son brought them together so much that they felt like a family. Dorothy had been observing the couple from afar for some time and had long since realized that Ray and Gwen loved each other but couldn't admit it to themselves. She decided to help them. When Gwen took Kevin to karate class, Dorothy took the opportunity to talk to Ray. "Listen, Ray, I've lived my life, seen a lot, and I can't understand why you two are torturing each other. You live together, obviously love each other, so get married and be done with it. Gwen adores my grandson and has a heart full of love for him. Life is short, and the years fly by." Ray was stunned. "How did you guess?" "I really do love Gwen, but there's a secret, and I don't know how to tell you. I'm afraid of hurting you, and she's afraid that you'll hate her and Kevin won't understand." The elderly woman simply waved her hand. "Oh, I know what you're keeping in secret. I often wander at night because I can't sleep. I knew that Gwen is Kevin's mother, and my daughter was a surrogate mother. I accidentally overheard your heartfelt conversations. At first I cried secretly, was a little angry with Gwen because my daughter gave birth to her child and she herself died. But we can't turn back time. I see how much Kevin loves her, and she loves him sincerely. So fate is what it is. Everyone carries their own cross. And don't delay, my dear. Gwen is just waiting for you to propose to her and hug her. Everyone needs warmth and affection. And as for Kevin, don't tell him anything. I beg you, he's still young. Let him think my Tracy is his mother, and soon he'll call Gwen Mummy too. You'll see." Ray was moved by these words. "You're so wise, Dorothy. Thank you for understanding. Don't be angry. You're probably right. We need to live here and now, not look back at the past. Oh, I almost forgot. Get ready. You'll be admitted to the hospital on Monday for an operation. Don't worry about Kevin. We'll take care of him. The main thing is for you to recover. It's hard to watch you suffer with this knee." Dorothy waved her hands and almost burst into tears. "Oh, Ray, my dear, thank you. This is so much money. You didn't spare anything for a old, strange woman. I've never met anyone like you. I swear to God, you're a golden person." Ray even blushed. "Why are you saying that you're a stranger? You're my son's grandmother, a member of the family. Okay, enough praise. Let's go have tea." That same night, someone quietly knocked on Gwen's door. The woman was rubbing her eyes sleepily, wearing only a thin lace nightgown. She opened the door quietly and froze. Ray was standing on the threshold with a pillow in his hands. He slipped inside, hugged the woman tightly, and whispered, "Can I stay with you? Won't you kick me out? Gwen, my dear, I can't take it any more. I'm not made of iron. Be mine forever. Please, be my wife." Finally, Gwen heard the words she had been dreaming of and passionately responded to the kiss. Ray lifted the feather-light woman in his arms and carried her to bed. They didn't close their eyes until dawn, and only the sly moon, peering through the window, witnessed their love. From that day on, Gwen seemed to be a different person. She was no longer sad, but flitted around the house, her tinkling laughter spreading everywhere. Dorothy, seeing this, crossed herself quietly and whispered, "Thank God, let them be happy, since it didn't work out for my Tracy." Kevin had been calling Gwen Mum more and more often, the word accidentally slipping out of his mouth. Gwen was melting with happiness, calling him my son. Dorothy had a successful operation and had almost stopped limping. She was now able to enjoy gardening, spending time in her beloved garden and walking for long periods of time. She was endlessly grateful to Ray and God for helping them meet in the park that day. A year had passed. Gwen and Ray had long since married and were living in harmony. Ray was very proud of his family, rushing home knowing that he was eagerly awaited, loved and respected. Gwen took care of the household, the house, and enjoyed her role as a mother, devoting all her time to her son. However, lately she had been feeling very unwell. She often felt nauseous, especially in the mornings. Her appetite disappeared altogether, and she couldn't eat anything. Or, on the contrary, a raging hunger woke up, and she literally swept everything off the table. She had also lost a lot of weight, and for some reason she wanted to sleep. Gwen was worried and read many diagnoses on the internet. She began to suspect the worst and was afraid to go to the doctor. What if he said she had little time left to live? So she endured it all, hoping it would go away on its own. Ray also began to suspect that something was wrong. His wife had changed a lot. She became absent-minded, often cried secretly, and their intimacy became less frequent. He tormented himself, thinking that maybe Gwen had fallen out of love with them and was now suffering, not knowing how to say it. And only Dorothy had long suspected what was going on, and one day couldn't stand it. "The girl will be born. I bet you anything. True signs." Ray and Gwen looked at her in amazement and asked in unison, "Who is having a girl? What are you talking about?" The elderly woman just laughed. "Oh my God, we're both over 30 and they still don't understand that they're going to have a baby soon. It's hilarious, I swear. Kevin, your sister will be born. Remember your grandmother's word." Gwen just waved her hand. "No, it's impossible. Don't make up anything. I have been childless for a long time, and the diagnosis was given to me by medical professionals. I just got sick, but I don't know what it is. It's hard and bad for me." Ray just blinked and didn't know how to react, wondering if the old lady had gone crazy. Dorothy, as if she read his mind, said, "Do you think the old woman has gone mad in her old age? Well, we used to tell the terms, pregnancy and the gender of the child by signs in the village. It's a girl, and that's it." The couple talked all night, unable to sleep, and early in the morning, despite Gwen's protests, Ray took her to the gynecologist. Gwen cried and couldn't believe her ears when the doctor ran the sensor over her stomach and told her, pointing to the monitor, "You are pregnant, 3 months along. Everything is fine." Why are you crying?" The woman explained through sobs. "I am happy, but I was told many years ago that I was hopelessly infertile, so I didn't expect to get pregnant at all. It's just a miracle." The doctor just smiled. The child is a miracle, but we've seen even more amazing things here. Your doctor was wrong. Anything can happen. Get dressed, Mum, and don't cry. Take care of yourself. Ray almost went crazy with happiness. Soon he would become a father. They will have a child. He didn't even dare to dream about it. Now the main thing was for Kevin to understand everything correctly and not be upset and jealous. When Ray and Gwen returned from the hospital, they found Dorothy crying at home. "Ray, Gwen, Kevin ran away. My tongue led me to this. Yesterday I told that a girl would be born, and he probably heard that and thought something wrong. I came to wake him up in the morning, but he's not here. I searched the yard. I even walked around the whole neighborhood. I don't know what to do. Where should I look for him? Where could he have gone?" Gwen suddenly realized. "I know where he is, at his mother's grave. Let's go quickly." Silly boy, I can't imagine what he'd overthink to himself there. The spouses went to the cemetery and indeed found a sad and tearful Kevin sitting by his mother's grave. Seeing Ray and Gwen, the boy shouted, "Go away! I'm not needed by you anymore. I'm a stranger to you, and soon you'll have your own baby. Why do you need me? I'll just be a hindrance." Gwen couldn't hold back. She fell to her knees. "My dear son, what are you saying? My little one, I love you more than life. I swear. We'll all raise your younger sister together, but we won't love you any less because of that." Kevin wiped his nose and looked at Ray suspiciously. "Is it true, Dad? You won't stop loving me either? Honestly?" The man picked up the boy and hugged him tightly. "As a man, I give you my word. You're my son, and I'm proud of you. Never do that again. Don't run away. You scared us a lot. Grandma has been crying all morning. Well, let's go home. Don't upset your mum. She may be in heaven, but she worries about you, as well as your second mum, Gwen." On the way, Kevin hugged Gwen, calmed down and fell asleep. He realized that he was important and needed in this family, that they loved him and worried about him. Gwen's pregnancy was difficult. She suffered from swelling and toxemia. But Ray supported her greatly and took care of her tenderly, massaging her legs and lower back, helping her put on shoes. One day, Kevin also put his ear to Gwen's belly and talked to his little sister. "Hey, can you hear me? I'm your brother Kevin. I'm waiting for you to play my super train." Amazingly, the baby always kicked inside as if responding. It was so cute. Ray went with Gwen to parenting classes and agreed to be her partner during labour, which he later regretted deeply. He fainted 3 times, broke out in a cold sweat, and was simply amazed at how strong women are, how much they endure to give birth to a child. Finally, he heard the long-awaited cry and felt relieved. They allowed him to hold his newborn daughter, and it was an indescribable moment of happiness, holding the most precious thing on earth in his hands. When Gwen was discharged from the maternity hospital, everyone was afraid of Kevin's reaction, because it was one thing to just talk about having a little sister, and quite another to live with her. But, to everyone's surprise, the boy took his role as the older brother very seriously. He watched over the little girl, played with her, and rocked her cradle. The girl was very calm, hardly ever cried, and always smiled at her big brother, reaching out to him. Ray usually melted when he was watching at this adorable picture. At such moments, he hugged both kids and said, "How much I love you both." And that was from the depth of